There was one question I was allowed to ask.
Oh, go ahead.
People who truly loved once are far more likely to love again. Sam, do you think that there's someone out there you could love as much as your wife?
Well, Dr. Marcia Fieldstone, I think that's hard to imagine.
What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to get out of bed every morning. Breathe in and out all day long. And then after a while, I won't have to remind myself to get out of bed in the morning and breathe in and out. And then after a while, I won't have to think about how I had it great and perfect for a while.
And we're back. What's going on, guys? My name is Alejandro, your resident reject filmmaker. I'm not a reject, am I? It's been a while, it's been a month or two, and I just want to say my thanks to everybody that's watched my previous video and responded so kindly to my video essay on love, because it means a lot to be vulnerable on a public platform like this and to share ideas that somewhat don't make sense, but make sense, you know, to the way we feel about things, right? And today's video will be no different, but maybe a little bit different, because we live in this world right now of just polarization and inundation with 24/7 news cycles. And so, you know, for me personally, I stopped looking at the news. I decided I'm going to take a sabbatical, no news November. So I have no idea what happened in the month of November. I don't even know anything at all. And I just wanted to have that peace for myself, right? This is going to be the least political video that you could ever watch on YouTube. I am so focused on having the least political video today that this is going to be, in fact, the most neutral political video that you'll ever never see. What? Please watch this video and like and subscribe and share with your friends and comment and tell me what you think about my ideas. What the fuck has happened to the rom-com, okay? Why is the rom-com no longer a viable use of romantic storytelling? Where have we gone wrong in the years? Now, most people would attribute the golden age of the romantic comedy to the 90s and early 2000s aesthetics, but it's not like these things have gone away, right? I mean, we know what the 90s were. I mean, I was born in 98, for God's sake. But why is it that studios have struggled to emulate that same energy that came from that 90s and 2000s aesthetics? Most people would attribute this nostalgia to the use of no cell phones, or the styling, or just the overall sentiments of peace and positivity that existed in the 90s. But if it were just nostalgia that kept people in the 90s and 2000s era, why is it that my sister, who was born in the great year that LeBron James won his first MVP, why would she, of all people, say that her favorite movie was 10 Things I Hate About You? She didn't know the era of Heath Ledger in the rom-com. She wasn't there for Julia Roberts' takeover of the 90s, okay? So why? What happened? Where have we gone? And I want to take a good hard look at this, because I think that there is a larger piece of this puzzle at play, and we have to break it down a little bit, right? So I want to break it down for us. 35 years of cinema, from When Harry Met Sally to Anyone But You. But first, before I do any of that stuff, I want you guys to get some popcorn, sit down, chill out, and let's hear a word from our sponsor today's video. Hey, sponsor. Sponsor. God, is
Hey,
that
sponsor.
you? Oh my God.
What the fuck are you doing, bro? You're doing an ad read right now.
What? An ad read?
Yeah, of course you have an ad read. This is a fucking video. This is YouTube,
I'm not
baby.
in a
What are you
fucking
doing?
ad.
I gave you the space. I wrote this in my script. You gotta put out
I'm
something.
eating
You gotta
fucking
do
Apple
something,
Jacks.
alright?
What do you want me to fucking do? I'm eating fucking Apple Jacks.
Just fucking promote it.
Nigga, it's Apple Jacks.
That's it.
I mean, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do, huh? What do you want me to do? I wanted to eat my fucking cereal in peace. It's 11 p.m. and it's all over my body now, and I don't even know what to do. Oh my God. Oh, my mom's gonna be so mad at me.
I'll come back to you, alright? Don't fuck it up when I come back to you, okay?
It's an 18-hour trip, which breaks down into 6 shifts of 3 hours each, or alternatively, we could break it down by mileage. There's a map on the visor that I've marked to show the locations where we can change shifts.
Great.
No, I don't like to eat between meals.
When Harry Met Sally maintains a sort of earnestness that I think persists through the entirety of the 90s rom-com era. This idea of trying to maintain your material circumstances while pursuing things that you can't quite explain within yourself. We're seeing the story of When Harry Met Sally take place over the course of 20 years, and within those 20 years we see these two people find each other, lose each other, love other people, get married, divorce.
Ellen comes home from work and she says, I don't know if I want to be married anymore.
And it's just this period of inconsistent connection, and these characters are debating on the practicality of romance.
You realize, of course, that we could never be friends.
Why not?
What I'm saying is, and this is not a come on in any way, shape, or form, is that men and women can't be friends because the sex part always gets in the way.
That's not true. I have a number of men friends and there is no sex involved.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Yes, I
You
do.
only think you do.
You're saying I'm having sex with these men without my knowledge?
No, what I'm saying is they all want to have sex with you.
They do not.
Do too.
They do not.
Do too.
What I think works so well about Nora Ephron's writing style is that she establishes the common man in the everyman very succinctly at the beginning. These characters are sincere in their approaches both to their life but also in their approaches to love. You could consider these people hopeless romantics, but you could also just consider them human beings in pursuit of connection.
Micro hibachis or the Ginza knives?
No, I'm not selling anything. I just want to help. I want you to know that your son called and he asked me for some advice on how you might find a new wife.
Who is this?
And I think that when she boils these characters down to their essence and their sincerity is what shines through the stories, you have no issue rooting for these characters. There is a type of optimism that these characters are imbuing despite maybe some negative outcomes. For example, we have Tom Hanks in Sleepless in Seattle, who is mourning the death of his wife, and yet his son is so passionately rooting for him that he's willing to call into a radio show.
All right, what's your Christmas wish, Jonah?
It's not for me, it's for my dad. I think he needs a new wife.
Oh, you don't like the one he has now?
He doesn't have one now. That's the problem.
Where's your mom?
She died.
Across the country, you have a Meg Ryan crying, just listening because she's having such a shit day, and this conversation has brought her some semblance of hope. And that's what really ties these things together, is that despite everything that's happening within the world, both within the story and outside of it, is that every character holds hope close to themselves. And hope is often how they find the love in these stories. They have to hope, they have to believe, they have to yearn and be earnest in their beliefs, because that is the only way in which these people are finding love.
It was just a misunderstanding, and on top of the Joe Jr. thing.
Excuse me?
Nothing.
No, there's no nothing now. What Joe Jr. thing?
The leaning thing.
The leaning thing.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you mean by the leaning? Because he gave me flowers?
And then you leaned.
And then I leaned.
Yeah.
Okay. How did I lean when I leaned?
How were you leaning? It's
Yeah.
a lot different than hugging. Hugging's very different. Hugging, that involves arms and hands, and leaning is whole bodies moving in like this. Leaning involves wanting and accepting. Leaning.
Hey, Luce, is this guy bothering you?
While You Were Sleeping is a movie about isolation. It is a story about a character who has lost both her father and her mother and really doesn't have anyone to go home to for the holidays. And she works at the train station selling tickets or giving tickets out. And while she sees the same people every day, she sees one man in particular that she is hopelessly in love with, or so she thinks. And on one fateful day,
Fate stepped in.
and this is where our love story begins. We have Sandra Bullock taking this man to the hospital who is now in a coma, and while in the hospital, she has to now play the role of his fiance. unbeknownst to her.
Was engaged.
She saved his life.
Here we have a woman that has no one to go home to for the holidays, and now she's in this big family, this family that is feuding and fighting and laughing and loving, and it's just comfortable, and it's something that she hasn't felt in potentially years or some years, or maybe never at all. And this character is so drawn to the family, so drawn by the connection to these people, that it's impossible for her to break the hard news that, hey, I don't know this motherfucker, I just fucking saved his life. He's hot, but no. But how could she do that? Because here, in this reality that she now lives in, if she were to do that, she may never have a chance at this again.
Lucy, I really don't have time for this.
Oh, no. You have to tell me what to do.
Tell the truth.
If I tell Jack that I lied to his family, he will never speak to me again. And Ox, and Midge, and Mary, and Saul.
Saul? Who's Saul?
It's a next-door neighbor. You know what? Actually, he knows.
Lucy, you're born into a family. You do not join them like you do the Marines.
And it's there within the sincerity of pursuing people and pursuing connection that we find a romantic comedy trying so desperately to be earnest.
I object.
Oh, I didn't get to that part yet.
I would have to object too.
What about you?
I'm thinking.
What the hell is going on?
But among the many movies that exist within the 90s, now I understand that there are misses, okay? Not every movie was perfect. Not everybody was shooting for the fucking stars when they made a rom-com. Despite Nora Ephron kind of pioneering a new idea of rom-com, we are still tried and true with our meet cutes, will they, won't theys, and hate to love stories. It allows us to take in perspectives from people that we want to sympathize with. And that's where I think a movie like As Good As It Gets shines so thoroughly in this era as well.
2 sausage, 6 strips of bacon with fries.
Fries today.
A short stack, coffee with cream and sweetener.
You're gonna die soon with that diet, you know that.
Now we're all gonna die soon. I will, you will, and it sure sounds like your son will.
A movie about a man that is a racist, homophobic, narcissist, mentally ill 50-year-old white man is deserving of the love of a beautiful young woman who is lonely, isolated, and can't seem to find a relationship because she's a single mother. I think that's why. Is that what they were implying?
Today on the bus, there was this adorable couple, and I felt myself giving him a dirty look.
You know, As Good As It Gets is a very interesting movie in this way because, you know, if I look at it from the lens of a 2024, it simply just shows me that we were, even back in the 90s, trying to find a middle ground for these extremist ideologies.
How, she wondered, could she find such hope in the most shameful part of her? At last, she was able to define love. Love was...
Mr. Udo, I'd like to speak to you, please. Let me do this by myself.
Love was...
Are you in there?
Son of a bitch! Pansy-ass stool pusher. Yes!
Maybe this can wait.
But what you don't understand about this movie is that there is this sort of introspection that is happening with this character and this radical rejection of the old ways of interpreting the world. And yes, we're looking at it through the lens of an OCD narcissist. We still see it as a reflection of contemporary culture in that I would argue that America is inherently narcissistic. And Jack Nicholson embodies this idea of the American narcissy and uses it as a driving force for the story. Ultimately, this character, played by Helen Hunt, succumbs to this idea of accepting who this person is for who they are and understanding that this is a flawed human being but is changeable, is adjustable, and can be molded into a person with empathy and decency and humanity.
I have a personal question.
Tell me, even if you're scared.
Scared?
Tell me why you wanted me here.
If you ask me, I'll say yes.
Well, there's a lot of reasons. One thought, maybe if you had sex with Simon, maybe it would...
What?
Well, it's one idea.
That's why you brought me? Like I'm a what? And I owe you what?
I don't know why I brought you. It was just one thought that I had. It came out first. That was all there was to it. I thought, you kiss him, me, when you two seemed to hit it off.
Now, if you look at that in the context of the greater American political system, you would realize that the Helen Hunts of this world have fucking failed. I think when you pull back the layers a bit here on the 90s and you look at it from a cultural perspective, it appears as though it is an era of tranquility. You're talking about a time period post the Cold War era, in a world where now globalism and the neoliberalism movement has now taken a foothold in the mid-90s. Bill Clinton famously coined the term doing well by doing good, and this idea of individualism sets the tone for this economic libertarianism, this idea of free market capitalism that is going to give us social justice, give us social change, and we don't really need social welfare programs as they were proposed in the New Deal era of, say, FDR. I'm sorry, I thought this was a video about the romantic comedy. What the fuck are you doing talking about the Democratic Party? Sorry, you're right. No, it's not. No politics. Sorry, no politics. But if you look at a movie like While You Were Sleeping or even Pretty Woman, you have the perspective told from the working class woman. And this idea of independence that she is trying to gain within these stories is an important part to take note of, because these characters are not affluent. These characters are not living in these extravagant worlds. Rather, they are living in a material reality that we can all relate to. And that is part of the draw for these characters. That's what makes these stories so earnest. Something like a Sleepless in Seattle, where you have these two characters that are driving, listening to the radio. These are very common cultural occurrences, things that people often can see themselves doing. And it makes these stories so much easier to tap into, to relate to. These people are not trying to emulate the world, they are the world. And this difference is intentional because it gives way to the idealism that love creates. This idea that love is not something tangible, but rather an otherworldly feeling that is going to achieve self-actualization. And we see that in stories like Sleepless in Seattle or You've Got Mail or even a While You Were Sleeping. The Sandra Bullock character is trying to find a way out of her loneliness through pursuit of family and love. She has found herself in a world in which she didn't even know when she was a kid, and is shocked to see the way in which this family interacts with one another. And this idea is reflected on the feeling of the culture at the time. I'm just talking about love, all right? This is just a conversation about love, okay?
Repeat after me. I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
Now, when we look into the 2000s, it is a continuation of this mid to late 90s neoliberalist movement. Now we have the rise of the anti-populist. The upper middle class are now the spokesperson for the everyday Americans. And we see that take foot in the early 2000s with movies like Love Actually, or even a movie like Hitch.
Our business is 100% referral, and thus far untraceable. And if there's one thing I've learned, when you orchestrate, coordinate, and otherwise mess with fate, it's best to fly under the radar.
Now, Hitch can serve as a perfect metaphor for the overly eagerness that exists within the 2000s, both in the attempt to create a dramatic and effective rom-com, but also in the way we are approaching romance as a whole. Now, Hitch is a story about a man who believes himself to be a love doctor in the age of ChristianMingle.com. This is pre-Bumble, pre-Tinder, pre-Hinge. We're talking about Match.com, ChristianMingle.com, CountryFolkFuckEachOther.com.
Where's Jill?
She's really lonely and out walking the cornfield again.
And Hitch, played by the GOAT, Will Smith, is just a master at finding the perfect woman.
So tell me about her.
Have you ever met someone and you knew right away she was going to be important to you? Not just because of her looks, but, you know, that X factor.
How'd you meet her?
Actually, I was in a shop buying pajamas for my mom.
And by that, of course, you mean you were buying lingerie for another woman.
Yes.
And so we see in this movie this character Hitch dealing with men that are overly eager and awkward and unable to approach women in a very authentic or natural way. And so therefore he must teach them how to be human beings, everybody. Everybody needs to learn how to be a human in this movie, interestingly enough.
Colors, you know, they seem dull, and things that used to matter, I don't know, they just no longer do. I think things aren't gonna snap back unless I bang her.
This movie is one of my favorite personally because it's just perfect, I think. It's so flawed, it's so cheesy, it's so tropey, but you know what? It has goddamn heart. And that's what some of these movies in the 2000s had more than any other era prior to it, was some fucking heart. And you know what? Will Smith put everything he could into that damn role, especially in this speed dating scene.
That's your source?
You buried yourself, Alex.
Then you weren't listening.
I heard every word. You're a scam artist. You trick women into
getting out of their own way. So great guys like Albert Brenneman have a fighting chance. Please. Okay, no. I want everybody to take a good look at this right now. Because this right here, this is exactly why falling in love is so goddamn hard.
Fuck. Woo! God damn. When you look at a movie like Hitch, it seems innocuous at first. What we see in this movie is an early introduction to Hitch, who has believed himself to be the love doctor, a person that can answer all problems for dating woes, has the solutions for every man and every woman struggling to find their one. He has the anecdote, he has the solution. In the 2000s, love becomes less of an idealistic approach to romance and more of a materialist, predictable method in which we can find connection with each other. And Hitch is the perfect example of that type of film, because we have Alex Hitchens, who has created a method to the madness of love that can solve the problems of the everyday man. And in this solution, we see the trials and tribulations and the mostly failures of this approach, because rather than trying to find love organically, it is commodified. And I love this movie. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think that it is the perfect catalyst to explain to you what's happening in the romance genre at this time, because romance is no longer this fantasy. It is a reality that is tangible and touchable, and that makes it inherently uninteresting. Because, I mean, let's look at the logistics of Hitch, even though this is unnecessary. This is unnecessary jargon. How much is he charging these men for this to live in a penthouse in Manhattan?
Get out.
And who's buying it? It's very easy to say that Albert Brenneman is the quintessential everyman, the nerd loser, the not so cool kid in class, the one that wears glasses, sits in the back, all this stuff. But you forget the part of this that he is an executive accountant for a famous actress. This is not no slouch. He may be nerdy.
I screamed at my boss, I quit my job! What?
He is well aware of the material reality that he and Allegra Cole live in. We aren't seeing the same benefit from Harry. Harry came from Chicago in a car with Sally, with nothing to his name. Albert Brenneman is a fucking finance bro. Can we fucking get the elephant out the room on that one? He's a great guy. He could be a cool guy to have a beer with.
I'm desperate, basically. I mean, not in general, you understand, not just for anybody, but man, for her. Yeah.
This is a person paying for a service at a fucking overmarket price because he can afford to do that. He loses his job, which effectually means nothing to him in this story, and just focuses on getting the bag from Allegra Cole. And look, we can all appreciate the beauty behind that storytelling, but we can also recognize that it is disconnected from the populist idea of romance that exists within this time, the realism that exists within this time. And you could say that a movie like Love Actually has more of a realistic approach to love, because at the end we all end up at the same place. Love is a place we all can go to. Love is a place we can all access. It exists in material and it doesn't exist in abstract. It's almost impossible not to recognize that the reaction in the rom-com genre is almost certainly attributed to the post 9/11 trauma that has happened in American culture. We have now radically shifted our ideology to the right in place of a more individual pursuit of personal freedom. So now people are not only getting less social security, less healthcare, and less social stability, we are now moving all of those things to privatization into a free market where people can now fight for their own individual economic certainty. Everyone is now in the pursuit of a personal material journey, and it is reflected in our media and is reflected in our romantic comedies because we are now not looking at the everymans, we are now not looking at the everyday workers, we are now looking at the upper class to show us the way in which you can self-actualize with love. There is now a barrier of entry to the pursuit of romance, especially in the romantic comedy. Love exists once you've made a certain economic status to give yourself the ability to find love. And that's where movies like Hitch come into play. That's where we get movies like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, where you have Matthew McConaughey pursuing a woman because he just had the fucking balls and was bored enough to do it.
Hi.
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 This only comes in regard to a person that is so disinterested with his physical, economic circumstance that he is now willing to play a game with his pursuit of love.
Oh, you are already falling in love with me.
I'm gonna make you wish you were dead. Poor guy.
It is not the same interest that we've seen in the same way that we've seen Sleepless in Seattle or When Harry Met Sally, where you have these characters pursuing love because there is an earnest pursuit of self-actualization that coincides with a romantic act. This is now a pursuit of love for a place of commodification, a way of social advancement. It no longer becomes an honest pursuit. And that is inherently the 2000s dilemma of the romantic comedy. And when you look at a movie like Something's Gotta Give, you kind of see the difference between the Jack Nicholson character of As Good as It Gets, because in Something's Gotta Give, you see how materialistic the Jack Nicholson character has become. This old man dating a younger woman who's now fallen in love with the younger woman's mother.
Yes, I have an intruder in my house. 29 Daniels Lane, Sagaponack.
I'm dating your daughter, Marin. She invited me here for the weekend. She's in her room right now changing.
Ah! You're dating my daughter?
Now, who would have thought that would be worse news?
This reality that these characters are living in not only is echoed by the affluence that they have within the story, whether it's them staying at this beach house by themselves because there's nothing else to do with their time, but also by the way in which they slow pace this story. It is such a slow burn of a movie that you feel the way in which time passes in this film. And I think that's what makes the film so beautiful, right? I mean, you know, you believe that these two characters will give in to their stubbornness at any point, and yet it is drawn out. The repression, the frustration, the fear of failure at such an old age. It is a beautiful approach at examining how you can find love after so many years of heartbreak.
I really like you.
I really like you.
Yeah, but I love you like you.
And I do think that there is still something to say about romantic comedies like Something's Gotta Give or Hitch that offer real critical commentary to our culture. The problem is that in these movies, love becomes material, and no longer is it an otherworldly, idealistic approach. We are disillusioned by love. We know what love is. Just like Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton know what love is in this movie, Alex Hitchens believes he knows what love is in Hitch. In the same way that in How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, Matthew McConaughey is hell-bent on believing that love exists only when he needs it to.
And that's how it's done.
So these movies do not place a high value on love the same way that we've seen in years prior. Now you could also look at a movie like Garden Shed, where you have Zach Braff coming back to his hometown after being a success in the Hollywood industry, trying to just have a cool, quiet time while he's visiting. That is until he meets Natalie Portman's character. But it's really hard to dive into this movie, I think, when you see scenes like this.
Are you really retarded?
No, I'm not.
Cool.
Something's just you enjoy and then you move on, okay? And we're gonna move on for this one.
You know what I do when I feel completely unoriginal?
Blah, 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 blah.
Obama, I, do solemnly swear. I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
Now, the 2010s comes with a multitude of radical movements, but none greater than this new movement of hope. We have broken ground, we have cured racism, we have found the solutions to all of America's problems because we have elected the greatest president of all time.
Hey, are you still talking about politics?
Sorry, I'm not talking about it. I'm not talking about it. I swear. I'm setting the stage. Okay.
Here's the thing. I need you to talk about Punch Drunk Love and the Adam Sandler romance series, or you are going to die in 7 days.
Now, when we get to the 2010s of the romantic comedy, what have we learned so far, okay? When we look at the 90s, we've seen idealism. We've seen love as an unknowable idea, but it brings us together. In the 2000s, we see love as material. We know what it is, it's tangible, and it exists around us. We just have to put it together. But in the 2010s, love becomes predictable. In movies like Think Like a Man are the perfect example of love being predictable, because we have an intersection of characters from different affluent stories trying to find dating and connection through predictable means. And they find them.
I want you to be the #1 woman in my life.
It was like taking a test you already had the answers to.
What makes a story like Think Like a Man so powerful, I think, for the time that in which it came out, is its notable use of star power, whether it's Taraji P. Henson, Kevin Hart, Megan Good, Michael Ealy, Gabrielle Union. She's in that movie? Oh shit. These are probably the hottest black actors outside of Denzel Washington that we have in the industry at this particular moment. Now we've transitioned the romantic comedy to now look more diverse, to reflect more of the modern American culture. Now, many people could argue that Think Like a Man is just an updated Love Jones.
No. This is about that girl Nina, right? She jacked you up, didn't she?
You fucked him, didn't you? And you weren't even gonna tell me.
There is no surprises. There is nothing about this story that feels new or unique or interesting outside of the fact that these are probably really good performances. And they are. And Kevin Hart is masterful in his comedy in this movie. It is a very lighthearted, inconsequential story, and we enjoy it for that. I think that that has importance, but the most important thing that it does, it makes love predictable. It makes love almost too easy. And sure, that's fine. That's what good movies do, win. Okay? But the way in which these stories are uncritical of the system in which they are now within is a perfect emblematic result of the new democratic movement. This idea that the system is now ours and we can control it however which way we can.
Look at the white man trying to make light of the relationship issues of a brother.
It's not like that.
No, it is like that. Let me tell you something, Jay. Black people marched and died for the right to fight and treat each other like shit. You did not march. You do not have that right. Neither do you, Bennett.
I saw it on TV.
This is now no longer a party for people that are in the working class. This is now a party for a high society of people who are now reaping the benefits of their economic success and are looking inward for self-actualization. These people have the luxury of time to find love.
Is he talking about romance still? He just said the working class people.
And the same thing goes for a movie like Crazy Stupid Love, where you have Ryan Gosling's character who is basically just a womanizer, bored out of his fucking mind, going to the same bar every day. That is until he finds...
Bonnie, he looks like a carrot, honey.
Who looks like a carrot? Hi. Who looks like a carrot?
Conan O'Brien. My friend, Hannah here thinks he's sexy.
That's weird because I think that your friend Hannah is really sexy.
Oh my God. You did not just say that.
It now has a new plaything for the rest of the film. And this is fine. Again, great actors, great acting, funny story. But once again, we're looking at the system not critically, but rather as a tool in which we could realize self-actualization. We are benefiting from an economic system with no criticism. There is no longer a critical look at the way in which the world works, but rather only the method in which we can find love. So now what we're doing, instead of reimagining old tropes, we are just repackaging them in different skins. That gets us from movies like Think Like a Man to Crazy Rich Asians, or even Crazy Stupid Love.
Amy heard you crying in the bathroom. We all thought it was cancer.
Oh.
Thank God, man.
Yeah, just my relationship.
Thank God.
Rather than update or reanalyze these ideas, we get movies like Kissing Booth, or even Friends with Benefits, About Last Night, or even Sleeping with Other People. These movies are wildly uncritical of the way in which we find love, but are rather utilizing predictable tropes to make a simple story even simpler. And this is important context because we are no longer in the business of trying to tell a unique or authentic or a true story about the way in which we observe romance in the modern society, but rather we are reflecting the upper class interpretation of the way in which working people love other people. And this just doesn't work for me. But I will say that when you watch them and you're just watching them for the entertainment value of them, they are entertaining.
So you guys are a thing. You guys are a couple, right? You guys are together?
Yeah, yes.
No way. Break up right now.
Daddy?
Please don't call him that. Cal, that's not gonna happen.
Then I will mess you up!
Dad? Cal?
Cal.
Jessica?
Bernie?
This is now an era in which culture is at a crossroad because we have the rise of social media, the rise of streaming platforms, and the rejection of traditional models. So it's hard for people to adjust to this almost teenage, awkward, transitional period that we are now going into. And in 2018, we get a movie like Set It Up, which just feels like an overly zealous early 2000s film.
Can I borrow some money?
No, because now this is my boss's dinner, and if I'm not upstairs in 2 minutes, I'm gonna be fired.
No, you won't. Look at you. You'll just swoop in with your lacrosse stick and your fraternity connections, and you'll keep getting promoted for no reason.
Because it's essentially taking How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days and giving it the trickle-up economy method.
Dinners, one for me and one for her so we could split it, okay? I can take one to my boss and you can take one to yours, please. This is DEFCON 5.
You know DEFCON 5's a good one, right?
It's bizarre, but you know what? We forgive it because Glenn Powell is so charismatic and Lucy Liu is so beautiful, and this movie is pretty funny that it just kind of flies under the radar as like it's harmless. It doesn't exist in the ethos as the way I'm trying to frame it as. But I think it stands perfectly at the end of an era. This moment in time with which we have now seen the way in which rom-coms have quietly declined. And by the time we get to this 2018 Set It Up movie, we are starting to see people move on from this early 2000s, late 90s idealistic look at love and trying to search for something maybe just a little bit deeper.
It's go time! Oh my God, this is how it always starts in my nightmare.
Unfortunately, that doesn't happen in the 2020s.
Justice Department released a 3-hour video of the battle between rioters and Capitol Police on January 6th. The video is graphic evidence of the violence behind an attempt to influence the outcome of the 2020 election.
Now, love becomes a lie for many reasons, but none more so than the disillusionment of culture that we've had in the 2020s post-COVID. Because what's really happening in the 2020s is this anti-intellectualism movement. It's the rejection of facts and feelings now being at the forefront of economic and social policy.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan.
People are now more worried about the way in which things feel more than the factual elements that make them true. And that is a terrible, 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 terrible fucking world to live in. But love becoming a lie in the 2020s is the perfect way in which we can observe this unilateral movement of love, the way in which we have started with idealism and ended with the disillusionment.
Hit it.
Sorry. It's important to understand just how bizarre the storytelling in the rom-com genre has gotten in the last several years. Because I would say, while we might have gotten some hints or some semblance of the 90s in the 2010s with movies like Think Like a Man or Crazy Stupid Love, none of that shit exists today.
Mind if I touch your wiener?
What? Just last year, we got No Hard Feelings with Jennifer Lawrence, which if you've never seen this movie, fucking thank God Almighty himself you haven't subjected yourself to such an odd, obscure, weird, bizarre...
Looking for something to slobber on you?
Can he help me?
I don't even think that it's bad as much as it is unwatchable. And I don't want to say this critically of the actors or the acting, but rather just why? Just as a whole, abstractly. Why did this ever exist?
Just wanted to introduce you to them, but I didn't know how to explain how old you are.
Jennifer Lawrence is a phenomenal actress, and I think that this role in No Hard Feelings is probably one of the only few roles in which she could have done to the best of her abilities, in the sense that no one else could have made this work, but she made it work the best she could make it work, I think. Because ultimately this movie just feels like a hodgepodge of what somebody believes a Gen Z alpha baby should be and a modern millennial. And these two vague ideas of human beings suddenly come together to make a movie that's just like, hey, we're cool and rad and swag and skibbity toilet. I'm not saying skibbity toilet in my day-to-day fucking life. No hard feelings, right? Just no hard feelings. Because I want to talk about Ghosted, a movie with Ana de Armas and Chris Evans, a movie you would assume would be phenomenal considering the cast. You have two of some of the best working actors again in our time, two really cool people and a really modern premise, because she's gonna ghost him and he's not gonna take it.
Pretty and slightly toxic. What is it with me and roommates?
Didn't realize you roomed with all of my exes.
So what he does is he decides to stalk her and find her in London, with which he realizes she's a spy and that he wasn't getting ghosted, she was just on the clock.
Who are you? CIA?
Now, what I think this movie fails to recognize with the idea of ghosting is that there is a aspect of this that can be humanistic. The perspective of ghosting or getting ghosted is a very real and honest perspective, and it should be one that is worth actually spending your time to tell. But rather than do so, this movie just focuses on this emphasis of spectacle and trying to create a grandiose version of this ghosting concept that you almost forget that this movie was supposed to be about two people going on a fucking date. And it loses every semblance of trying to reel it back in.
You know, I'm trying to connect about a person that just died. Someone you knew well. Are you capable of that, or is that only on first dates? The rest of the time, it's just chemical weapons and passcodes and bullets and death.
Wait, what passcodes? What do you mean about passcodes?
I mean, it's just, what the fuck is happening? I don't understand why there is this desire to create a spectacle in the same way that Dune exists. You don't have to put all the money into the fucking action scenes. To me, it just doesn't feel like the chemistry really works.
No, I was just wondering if you wanted to, you know, go out sometime.
Are you serious?
Am I wrong? These are great actors. But why is it that there is so much distance between this chemistry?
Hey! Fine, I lied about my job. But you lied about who you are.
Well, excuse me for fudging a few details to try and impress the most amazing woman I've ever met.
I feel like they're coworkers, respectfully. This movie also shouldn't exist, and yet it does. And we are all worse for it. What we start to see in these rom-coms of the 2020s is that there is this need for this overly optimistic outlook for these characters without centering them in the everyday or the realism that we saw in the 90s, 2000s, and sometimes even in the 2010s. We've abandoned this concept of realism because we're uninterested in the idea that two people can exist in a world and in a society that looks like ours. We are so focused on a spectacle of a radical idea of these stories that we feel as though we have to achieve some sort of radical optimism with how beautiful everybody is, how grandiose the sets are, and how great everything looks. So now these movies sit between a rock and a hard place, right? These movies exist without any context, without any substance, without any meaning, and they are simply there as content. And I think the quintessential failure of the romantic comedy comes in the form of Anyone But You.
Honey? About to order, do you want your usual? My wife would like a double espresso, although you've had trouble sleeping lately, right, babe? Maybe we should back it off to a single. You kept the light on till like midnight last night.
I did, didn't I? Yeah, so maybe I'll just have a peppermint tea with 2 sugars. Thanks, husband.
Ugh, fuck. I hate that shit. Now, I love Glenn Powell, and I really love Sydney Sweeney, and I think that these two are wonderful actors individually, separately, and never together. When we take Glenn Powell, for example, when we see him in Set It Up, we see him as the everyman. We see him as the next man up. We see him as the person that's going to take this genre fucking forward. Someone like a Richard Gere or even a Matthew McConaughey because he's from Austin. But in the movie Anyone But You, he's effectively relegated to that hot guy that probably works in finance. That is clearly by design. And I'm telling you, that's a bad design. Because why? But I'll get to the why in just a second. Because let's look at Sydney Sweeney, who's on the opposite side of this Anyone But You spectrum. Because when we look at her perspective of Anyone But You, what do we get? We get this Anna Kendrick-like awkward, quirky girl that is trying to be the girl's girl and the guy's guy.
Okay.
And by the way, it is not me to ask where the bathroom is. Every human does it. It's very, very normal.
And Sydney Sweeney is a generational actress in that she has very much the ability to transform the way that we view the romantic genre. She already has proven her star power in a show like Euphoria, and she's proven her acting ability in a movie like Reality.
This is my partner. What partner? Wally Taylor. Hey, how are you?
This person very much has the chops, the looks, and the capabilities to create lasting cinema. And I'm not saying that she has to play to her strengths of over-sexualization. I'm simply suggesting that playing the role of the awkward, quirky Anna Kendrick is a far different role from somebody like Julia Roberts or even a Sandra Bullock. Sydney Sweeney has a type of perspective that she brings to a movie, a type of perspective she brings to a show. And rather than play into those things in Anyone But You, they play against them. As a result, we end up with scenes like this.
What? No, it's just we're just situationally together.
Because when I saw you last night in the harbor, I thought it might be more with you two.
Just situationally.
And then they try to make up for it with scenes like this.
Still pretty amazing.
There's gotta be a little bit more than just trying to make two coworkers look sexy and trying to relegate all the background actors to just half-baked handshakes and making the one LGBTQ representation look so bland and uninteresting, or like these two people don't even like each other. What we lose in the 2020s of the rom-com is this relatability to these characters. Rather, we get these fake or faux interpretations of relatability that ultimately land flat, in my opinion. I'm not asking for Sydney Sweeney, Glenn Powell, and whoever the director is to make some sort of groundbreaking Casablanca-esque movie. I'm simply saying that Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell are uniquely two actors that have the ability to represent the idea of the everyman, which they both can be, and yet this movie insists upon itself that they are beautiful creatures that exist in the same realm as Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. And that's fine, but you're trying to make a movie about a quirky girl that's going to a wedding, and she's just not. And I'm not saying that she couldn't be the quirky Anna Kendrick character. I'm just saying, why in this movie? It seems like you want her to be the quintessential hot blonde while simultaneously hitting upon the tropes that exist in a movie with Anne Hathaway. Why? It's a lost film, and it is emblematic of the way in which the modern rom-com exists. It is lost. It has no bearings in society. It has no interest in replicating or even reflecting common contemporary culture, and simply is there to exist as eye candy, content, entertainment value with no substance, zero media literacy, and no visual interest. It's not to say that this movie couldn't have been good or doesn't have a decent script. I don't fucking know. It sucked in theaters. And this isn't to say that Sydney Sweeney doesn't have the ability or Glenn Powell doesn't have the ability to be these types of leading role characters. I'm simply saying this film fucking blows. But there is a reason for that. It's not just that these two people did this on their own. It's rather a reflection and a culmination of about 35 years of cultural degradation and the commodification of romance that has created a lane for a movie like Anyone But You to exist and for it to make $235 million. Because that's all people care about is $235 million. It's not about the way in which the chemistry exists in this film. It's about the opening box office weekend. When the fuck? Does anybody know how much fucking Silence of the Lambs made its first fucking box office weekend? Did we give a fuck about that in the 90s? Does anybody know how much Pretty Woman made in the box office weekend 1? What about weekend 2, for God's sake? Holy shit. Don't Google that. Don't Google it, okay? That's not the point. You're missing the point. But now we exist in such a materialist world. If you go on the internet, you see a hellscape of culture wars and people lost in their pursuit of trying to commodify the relationships that we once built. Sure, did people think this way in the 90s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, 10s, 20s, you know? Yes. Were they trying to make money off of these politically charged, racist, homophobic, sexist takes? Not everyone. Now everyone is. And that's the fucking problem. Now, if you've made it this far into the video, you probably realized by now that I've skipped over quite a few movies. So here is me speed running through the movies you think I missed. You haven't even talked about My Best Friend's Wedding one time. Excuse me, why haven't you talked about the romance of the Star Wars preludes 1, 2, and 3? Actually, you haven't talked one time about 50 First Dates. Sorry, Mississippi Masala wasn't brought up one time, and I'm getting really frustrated with your erasure. I love everything that you're saying right now, but 40-Year-Old Virgin was the best rom-com to come out of 2000, and the fact that you haven't brought it up makes me want to kill everyone you know and love. What's important to note about this very subjective 35-year film history is that this is more so about the degradation of the romantic comedies. But if I seriously had to look to positive outlooks of the future, I would say that a movie like The Materialist by Celine Song, which is a movie slated to come out in the next year or so, is probably going to revive my belief in the romantic comedy. And I would wholly believe that she would take the same exact approach to a larger budget production. Now, I notably left off one of the bigger box office releases this year known as The Fall Guy, which is a romantic comedy starring Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. And I think for a lot of people, you probably thought that this movie was going to be much bigger than it was, but to me, I wasn't surprised, because while I do very much love and appreciate the effort and energy and the storytelling that was put into The Fall Guy, it simply relies on the spectacle of filmmaking more than anything else. And I think ultimately there is just this disillusionment that has happened within the modern culture, which has just left people uninterested in the genre. And so I would argue that had this movie probably come out in a time period, maybe like the early 2000s or even 90s, yes, it would absolutely would have broken barriers, made this incredible, iconic run. But we live in this world where everything is spectacleized and nothing is interesting. So this movie just very much falls in the category of being disingenuous. And it's really not. It's actually pretty remarkable. But when you look at the trailer, for example, you would never know. I think it will age wonderfully, but I do think that it suffers from the same thing that makes Anyone But You so unlikable. And I don't think that that is the fault of the filmmakers as much as it is just the product of the time that we live in. But hey, who the fuck am I? I'm just a guy. And if you feel like there is a movie that I've missed that probably makes this point better than I could have, please let me know in the comments, or just tell me that I'm wrong entirely. I'm totally open to that. But if you feel like there are any issues with my points or anything that I didn't clarify or come up with correctly, please just let me know. I'm curious about the way in which people interpret this video, and if you have any ideas for videos that I can make, please let me know, because me making this 50 fucking plus minute video was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Somebody had reached out to me privately and told me to talk about the power of friendship in movies, so be on the lookout for that video too. I would rather steal your ideas. How about that? I notably have left off the movies that are on my fucking wall this time, but trust me, I'm getting to them. You're gonna fucking see. I still don't have an outro. I'm working. Who's working on this? Somebody has to work on the outro. I can't just leave text at the end of my fucking. Alejandro.